My name is Sarah. I am 26 years old. I was born in the Jehovah's Witnesses, baptized at 13, married at 18, and disfellowshipped 4 months ago. I am speaking to you from a small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, and I am going to tell you, tonight, what happened in a Holiday Inn room on the evening of October 14th, 2017. There is a practice inside the truth that nobody names in the Kingdom Hall. Jehovah's Witness brides are not prepared for their wedding night. Not with a conversation, not with a booklet, not with a whispered word from an older sister. They are handed a doctrine called headship, a scripture about submission, and, in my case, a worn copy of a book from a mother who would not meet my eyes. And then they are driven to a hotel by a 22-year-old groom who has been given exactly as much information as they have, which is none. What happens in that room, and in the 8 years after it, is called a marriage. It is something else. Stay in this room with me. Subscribe, not for me, but so the next 18-year-old bride has a voice in her pocket that is not her mother's silence. Leave a word below if you were ever handed a chapter instead of a conversation. Add your voice. My mother braided my hair on the morning of October 14th, 2017, and she did not speak. The bathroom door was closed. The tile was cold under my feet. I sat on a low wooden stool while she pulled my hair into the 2 tight side braids I had worn to every meeting at the Kingdom Hall since I was 6 years old. Her hands smelled the way they always smelled. Avon hand cream. The faint paper of the watchtower she had read that morning before breakfast. She did not look at my face. When she was finished, she stood up and walked out of the bathroom without a word. A moment later, she came back with a book in her hands, a worn copy of The Secret of Family Happiness, pink hardcover, dog-eared corners, a book the organization had printed in 1996 and handed out for 30 years afterward to every engaged couple in every Kingdom Hall in North America. A yellow post-it note was stuck to the top of the pages, marking a specific chapter. Chapter 5. A Wife Who Builds a Happy Family. She placed the book on the edge of the counter next to me, and she said only one thing, in the voice she used for reading scripture aloud on Sunday afternoons. She said, "He is your head now." Then she walked out and closed the bathroom door behind her, and I sat there, on the stool in my plain white cotton dress, 18 years old, baptized for 5 years, and I looked at the book. And I understood that whatever I was about to do that evening, I was expected to do it with the organization's Chapter 5 tucked into my overnight bag, and without asking a single question. I had grown up in the truth. I was born into it. My mother had been a regular pioneer for 30 years by the morning she braided my hair, and I had been at every Sunday Watchtower study, every midweek meeting, every circuit assembly, every district convention since before I could walk. I had heard the word fornication 1,000 times. I had heard the word modest more than I had heard the word love. I had been told, from the time I was 11 years old, what I could not wear, what I could not watch, what I could not say, who I could not touch, and why everything beyond the walls of the Kingdom Hall was spiritually dangerous and worldly. But nobody, not my mother, not my father, not the sisters who braided my hair at assemblies, not the wives of the elders, not a single article in any Watchtower magazine I had ever read, nobody had told me what a body does on a wedding night. The pink book on the bathroom counter did not tell me either. Chapter 5 is about cooking and keeping a home, and speaking softly to your husband, and submitting. Chapter 5 is not about the body. I knew more about the shape of Satan's influence on secular music than I knew about the shape of my own skin. I knew the Greek meaning of the word submission. I did not know the English meaning of the word consent. And I did not know, that morning in October, that I was not the only bride in that congregation, or in any JW congregation in Ohio, walking toward a hotel room in Columbus with a head full of scripture and 2 empty hands. The ceremony was in the main hall at Mansfield North at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. A small congregation, folding chairs arranged in rows, a single arrangement of white lilies on the podium. Brother Thompson presiding, the same Brother Thompson who would, 8 years later, sit in the back room with a clipboard and ask me about my marriage bed. Daniel stood at the front in a plain dark suit. I remember the specific way the fluorescent lights flattened the color of it. He did not smile when I walked in. He was not supposed to. A Kingdom Hall wedding is not a performance. It is a contract witnessed by Jehovah and by the elders. The reception was downstairs in the basement. Sheet cake from the Kroger bakery. Lemonade in plastic pitchers. No dancing because dancing was worldly. No alcohol because moderation is a spiritual principle. My brother Michael shook Daniel's hand and clapped him on the shoulder and told him, quietly, in that particular brother-to-brother voice, "Take care of her." And Daniel said, "Jehovah will." At 6 o'clock, Daniel drove us to the Columbus Holiday Inn in his father's white Buick. The sky was already dark. The radio was off because secular music in that car would have felt like a violation. We did not speak for most of the hour. I realized somewhere on Interstate 71 that I did not know him. I did not know the man I had just married, and I did not know that he did not know me either. It takes time, after you leave, to understand that the ignorance was not an accident, that it was a design. The organization does not forget to teach girls about their bodies. The organization chooses not to. And the choice is not a bug in the system. The choice is the system. From the age of 12, JW girls sit through yearly talks at circuit assemblies on the dangers of fornication. Specific talks, pointed talks, talks built around the phrase, bad associations. We are shown how to dress, how to sit, how to keep our knees together, how to avoid worldly boys, how to refuse a dance at a school prom, how to explain to a biology teacher that we cannot attend the reproductive unit, how to modest our way through a summer in Ohio in 90-degree heat. What we are never given, not once, not in any publication in any decade, is a coherent explanation of what will happen on the night after our wedding. We are given books instead. We are given chapters. We are given citations. And we are told that if we read the citation closely enough, the silence around it will become a form of guidance. The doctrine has a name. It is called headship. You will find it printed in bold in the Watchtower articles given to every engaged couple in the congregation, and in the chapter my mother marked with a yellow post-it and left on my bathroom counter. The husband is the head of the wife. The wife submits as to the Lord. The wife yields, in matters large and small, to the spiritual authority of her husband, and through her husband to the authority of the elders, and through the elders to the authority of the 8 men on the governing body in Warwick, New York, who have decided what my wedding night should look like. There is another phrase in those articles. It is older. It shows up in the marriage counseling sessions the elders held for Daniel and me the week before our wedding. The phrase is marital due. It is a borrowed phrase from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, stripped of its context, hardened into doctrine. It means that a wife owes her husband physical access to her body, and a husband owes the same to his wife, and the refusal of this access, for any sustained reason, is considered spiritual rebellion. The word consent does not appear in the literature. Not once. I have checked. My mother walked into her own wedding night at 21 years old in a hotel room in Cleveland in 1986 with the same 2 empty hands I would carry into my hotel room 31 years later. Her mother had not told her either. Her mother's mother had not told her mother. This is a chain. This is a system of women handing each other silence and calling it tradition. I did not understand this the morning of October 14th, when my mother closed the bathroom door. I thought she was cold. I thought she did not love me enough to prepare me. I carried that belief for years. I carried it into the Columbus Holiday Inn. I carried it into my marriage. I carried it all the way to the Kroger parking lot in January when she crossed the street to avoid me. But I understand it now. Ellen Miller was not the architect of my silence. She was one of its tenants. She had been trained, as I had been trained, that certain words were worldly, that certain questions were fleshly, that a mother's job was to hand her daughter the chapter and the citation and trust Jehovah to do the rest. She failed me, and she was also failed. Both things are true. Both things fit in the same quiet bathroom on the same October morning. The room was on the 3rd floor, room 312. I remember the number because Daniel said it out loud in the elevator, the way he said the page number of a Watchtower article during the Sunday study. Factual, administrative. I sat on the edge of the bed in my plain white cotton dress, and I listened to Daniel in the bathroom, and I realized I had nowhere to put my hands. My mother's copy of The Secret of Family Happiness was sitting on the nightstand where I had placed it when we came in, the yellow post-it still marking Chapter 5. I had not opened it. I did not need to. I had heard that chapter read aloud at Watchtower studies for 15 years. I understood what was in it. What I did not understand was why that book was the thing my mother had chosen to hand me instead of a single word of her own. Daniel came out of the bathroom in a white undershirt and the same dark trousers. He would not look at me. I would not look at him. We were two 18 and 22-year-old baptized witnesses who had spent our entire lives being told that everything worldly was dangerous, and who were now alone in a Holiday Inn in Columbus, Ohio, being expected by Jehovah and by the governing body and by our parents and by our congregation to do something neither of us had ever been given a single accurate sentence about. He said quietly, "I'm sorry." And I said, "For what?" And he did not answer me, and we turned off the light. I am not going to describe what happened. That is not the video. The video is the silence before and the silence after, which is the real story anyway. In the morning, Daniel prayed. He prayed for our marriage, and he prayed for Jehovah's blessing. And he prayed specifically for forgiveness for any way in which either of us had fallen short in honoring our covenant. I sat in the hotel bed, and I listened to a 22-year-old man apologize to God for something neither of us knew how to do right. And I felt, for the first time in my 18 years, a feeling I did not have a word for. It was not shame, exactly. It was not guilt. It was the specific cold of being told, by the only institution I had ever trusted, that something I had just experienced was supposed to have been holy, and knowing, in the pit of my stomach, that it had not been. I told an older sister 2 months later that I thought something was wrong with me. She said, "Pray harder. Jehovah sees your heart." I went home and I prayed harder. For 6 years. And nothing changed. Because the problem was never my heart. The problem was that I had been handed a chapter I could not read my way out of, and I had been told the failure to perform it was my own. It was in the 4th year of our marriage that I opened the drawer of Daniel's nightstand, looking for a pen, and I found the small blue notebook. The notebook was the size of my palm. The ink was cheap and blue and meticulous. Daniel had tracked, in neat, dated columns, the dates of my menstrual cycle, the dates of our intimacy, and, in a separate column, a rating. His private assessment of whether each encounter had honored Jehovah and whether either of us had fallen short. For a long time I stood in the bedroom holding that notebook, and I felt nothing. and then I felt everything. And then, eventually, I felt the thing I had never let myself feel about Daniel in 7 years of marriage. I felt pity. He was not cruel. He was not a monster. He was a 26-year-old man who had been handed the same empty hands I had been handed, and he had tried to solve the absence of instruction with a ledger. He was trying to turn intimacy into a spreadsheet, because a spreadsheet was the only form of spiritual rigor anyone in the truth had ever taught him. We were both children. We had both walked into that Holiday Inn with Chapter 5 tucked into our luggage, and we had both spent 8 years apologizing to Jehovah for not knowing what no one would say. I moved to Columbus in January. I packed 1 suitcase. I packed 2 cardboard boxes. I did not tell my mother I was leaving. She already knew. She had already crossed the street. In one of those cardboard boxes, at the bottom, under a winter sweater I had not worn in 3 years, I found the book. My mother's copy of The Secret of Family Happiness. The yellow post-it was still there on Chapter 5, faded now, the adhesive almost gone. I had kept it. I had not meant to keep it. It had survived 8 years of moving it from shelf to shelf, from house to apartment, from one locked bookcase to the next, and I had not once taken it out and opened it. I opened it in the Columbus apartment, on a bare wooden floor, in a room with no furniture yet, with afternoon light coming through a window that had no curtains. I turned to Chapter 5. The pages were soft. There were faint pencil underlines in the margins in 2 different handwritings, mine and my mother's, and I did not remember making the ones that were mine. And I did not throw it away. I did not know yet why I did not throw it away. I closed the book, and I put it on the kitchen counter, and I left it there. The first thing I did in Columbus that I had never been permitted to do was cut my hair. A woman in a small salon off East Main Street cut it to my shoulders while I watched in the mirror. I had never, in 26 years, seen my own hair above my shoulder blades. I cried in the chair. The stylist thought I was upset. I was not upset. I was meeting myself. I bought a single silver stud for 1 ear. I read a novel with no scripture in it. I walked into a coffee shop at 9 on a Tuesday morning and ordered something with the word caramel in the name, and drank it slowly at a small round table, and a man at the next table said, "Good morning," to me, and I said, "Good morning," back, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nobody called an elder. Nobody prayed over me. Nobody asked me if I was falling into bad associations. A man said good morning, and I said good morning, and we both kept reading our separate mornings. I had been afraid of the world since I was 4 years old. The world turned out to be a coffee shop. The world turned out to be a haircut. The world turned out to be a small silver stud that nobody had given me permission to wear. The book is still on my kitchen counter. I have not put it away. I think I will not put it away for a long time. It is not shame anymore. It is a receipt. It is the evidence that an 18-year-old girl walked into a Holiday Inn in Columbus 8 years ago, carrying the only instruction her mother had ever given her, which was not an instruction at all, but a citation. And that she survived it. And that she is still here. And that she is now 26 years old and choosing, for the first time, what to put in her own bathroom drawer. If you are listening to me right now, and you walked into your own wedding night carrying someone else's silence, a mother who handed you a chapter instead of a conversation, a church that would not teach, a husband who was also a child, I see you. I see you in your kitchen. I see you in your folded hands. I see you in the quiet you have carried for 20 years, or 40 years, or 60 years. And I want you to know that the silence was not yours. It was handed to you by a system that was never going to hand you anything else. And you are allowed to put it down. You are allowed to keep it closed on a counter and never open it again. You are allowed to choose your own kitchen. You are allowed to choose your own morning. You are allowed to walk out of the bathroom and not come back. Freedom hurts less than obedience. I promise you that.